Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. When every cent counts, impact your bottom line through better procurement. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining When Every Cent Counts, impact your bottom line through better procurement. Our session is going to start in about 2 minutes. I want to make sure everybody has time to file in. Hi, everyone. If you just joined, we will be starting our session in about 1 minute. All right, everyone, welcome to today's session, When Every Cent Counts, impact your bottom line through better procurement. We are rounding 12 o'clock, so we'll start and get everything started. I want to do a quick introduction. I will turn on the cameras for our panelists today and our sponsors and our key speaker. Thank you so much for joining today's call. I will do an intro, and I want to thank you, our sponsors, with Darby Dental. Presenting first will be Allison from Darby. Go ahead, do your intro, Allison.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you all to everyone for joining us and taking some time for today's presentation. We are really excited to partner today with CareStack and Method Procurement to provide some hopefully really valuable information around making the most of your spend in this new reality, a topic that's near and dear to our hearts at Darby for sure. What you may already know about Darby is that we truly partner with our customers to help keep dental supply costs down. Over the last 10 years or so, we have built a suite of solutions to help resolve a number of the everyday challenges our customers face, including services like IT services, equipment service, software, and a whole host of other solutions. One of the biggest differentiators at Darby is that for our entire 70+ year history, we have always worked remotely to serve our customers. So over the last 10 years, we have been hyper-focused on building a way of ordering for our customers that is hopefully the most convenient in the industry. So whether you like to order online or call your rep or order at 10 o'clock at night via the app, our goal is to be here when and how you want us to be so that we are truly most convenient for you and your time. Fortunately at Darby, we've been able to keep our entire team engaged for this entire time period. And so we are all here fully functional and ready to serve our customers. And if you're interested about learning more about Darby and how we might be able to help, feel free to reach out to one of our account managers or check us out on darby.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison. And I want to do a quick intro to our other sponsor today, CareStack. Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate the introduction. At CareStack, we're honored to partner today with Darby Dental and Method, specifically Dan Traub and Stephanie Trin, to present this really important topic. So a quick background on CareStack. Unlike Darby, we don't have a really rich and long history. We're a nascent company. And you can see the numbers on the bottom of your screen. In a nutshell, CareStack is a comprehensive cloud-based solution for the complete management of the dental practice. And we typically work with two types of clients. The first is a dental practice that wants to offer a contact-free or touchless experience for their patients as they reopen and see technologies enabling that and just don't know how to get there. They need a little bit of help. The second type of client, while they're visionaries and they're ambitious, they frankly have grown frustrated and aggravated by managing multiple different software subscriptions to run their dental practice. This has produced like a crushing overhead, as there's one subscription for electronic claims, another one for curbside check-in, another one for patient portal, another one for digital clipboard. You get it. It just adds up, and you're not an IT firm. And so these decision makers have really just grown aggravated and frustrated, and it's produced sleepless nights. So hopefully you fall into one of those two buckets and you're listening today, and you'll join us by taking a quick demo to learn more about CareStack. The best place to go for that is carestack.com and click on book a demo. So Stephanie, back to you. Thank you so much for this opportunity today.
Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate that. Before we get started, I just want to tell you guys that as attendees, you guys are automatically muted. We do encourage you to use our question feature. So go ahead and type in all those questions and we'll try to aim and answer those questions by the end of the session. And we'll get started. I want to do a quick intro to Dan, our key speaker today. Dan, go ahead and take away.
All right, thank you, Stephanie, and good morning and good afternoon to all of our attendees. We see some old friends and some new friends in the attendance list today. So welcome, and thanks for spending some of your time with us here. We know that it's a busy time. Hopefully, that today's content that we've developed will help you put those some of these new ideas to immediate use. This is a time of history, I suppose, where new ideas and innovations are really needed. So we hope that we will bring that to you today. A little bit about my background. I head up the product function here at Method Procurement. So in that role, I oversee development and product strategy, roadmap, quality assurance, our data functions, and help bring our procurement solution to life. Prior to my role here at Method, I have a consulting and technology background, specifically in procurement technology since about 2001 full time. So I've worked in other industries and developed best practices for those industries. And here over the last 2 years full time with Method, have worked to bring those best practices into dental. And we're going to give you some of those perspectives that we've learned here today. All right, so in terms of an agenda, we're going to focus really on that financial impact question. How can we use procurement to impact our practice's bottom line? Now, there's a lot that has changed, of course, and continues to change in 2020. So we're going to dive in right to that and probably tell you some things that you're already very familiar with. But soon after that, we'll shift into how you actually get the financial results that we're talking about. So how do we calculate then your own opportunities for improvement in your own practice, where we'll roll up our sleeves, we'll look at some numbers, we'll wear our entrepreneurial hats, we'll put our business hat on today, and we'll walk you through some of the savings potential in real nuts and bolts, hard dollar and soft dollar figures that you can take back to your team and evaluate, is procurement something that we need to take a better look at and we need to take a harder look at. We will end with some actionable steps to starting your own transformation journey. And by transformation, I think that's an important word that I like to use when we talk about procurement, because there's many steps in the procurement process. There's many things that you could improve, but it's really a journey, and it's perfectly acceptable and really a best practice to take a stepwise approach to that. You can't and shouldn't change everything all at one time. There's some lower hanging fruit, and then there's some higher hanging fruit. We're going to talk about how you get started on that path. Okay. Then we'll make sure that we include some time for questions at the end and a few follow-ups and resources for you to take back. All right, so let's get started here. So we'll talk about the bottom line, and what do we mean by the bottom line? Well, it's not just what might be impacting your practice, but it's also impacting your patients and their experience with you. So obviously, bottom line can mean profitability, which we'll be talking about quite a bit today, but it also kind of means the underlying definition, right? What's at the root of some of the issues that the dental industry is facing. We know that the world has changed, and the world has changed, and we don't have a we have a feeling that we're maybe not in Kansas anymore, right? So the old movie reference. We're all faced with additional care guidelines, particularly around infection control, and the even the check-in process, right, has changed. As Jim referred to, there are new solutions, from CareStack just to handle the check-in process, to make that smoother, because patients have a lot of concerns, and they are delaying and skipping those required treatments, and they're wanting to interact with their dentists and their staff and your staff a little differently. This has also yielded a reduced throughput because of the extra steps that you've had to take. And I have not heard percentages yet, comprehensive percentages about what that throughput hit has been, but I'm sure many of you can tell some war stories about your own practices there. We know that personal protective equipment, PPE shortages, have really been, I'll call it heartburn-inducing, headache-inducing, Maalox moments, whatever you want to call it. It's getting better. The supply, our sources in the market are indicating that the number of back orders is slowly being worked through, but it is still a very dynamic situation. You see this in pricing, you see this in the availability, you see this in new products coming, or old trusted products maybe going off the market, at least from your favorite sources of supply. So it's a very dynamic situation still. Many of us with school-age children are also looking at maybe sending our little ones to school with masks. I know that my wife and I are here in about a month going to be doing that. So what might that do to the PPE supply that's available to the dental industry? So I'll call this next slide Totos Revenge, right? So there's still more stuff that we're faced with. How about the required new equipment? The purifiers, the foggers. Some offices are actually running COVID tests on their patients. Just the mouth rinse guidelines have changed, and the disinfectants and how frequently those must be used. We know that the health guidelines in our environment have been changing with different guidance from different overlapping bodies of authority, are a very dynamic situation. We'll go back to PPE for a second. Most of you have probably had to explore different products, new products, maybe layering up on the masks and using different levels of masks that you're not used to using, expanding that to full face shields, isolation gowns, different glove products. So all of this has obviously led to a higher cost for your practice because you're using more PPE. But on top of that, we have the massive cost escalations. The cost escalations, in some cases, PPE is costing 4 to 6 times what it did pre-quarantine, pre-March 2020. And so many of our clients here at Method and across the industry, the dental industry, have been forced to find alternate sources of supply, some of which have been questionable, to be frank. Are those new sources of supply a trusted provider? We've had to navigate some of those types of questions and taking a bit of a risk on those new products, getting used to those new products. So all of these things together, from this slide and the slide prior, if I could summarize it, I would say that you've had to throw out your usual profitability assumptions. You have some throughput reduction, you've got some direct cost increases, and you have some labor redirection. You know, your team is spending time on things that you're not used to spending time on, or particularly in the same rate or same share of your time in now coping with this situation. So that's putting the squeeze on the profitability. Many of us, I think, in the industry are probably still in such early stages that we haven't been able to sit down and with a sharp pencil or a spreadsheet really start to calculate what that means. And so I want to propose that that is coming, and many of you will be forced kind of down that path. All right. So let's now explore what some of the financial impacts are. How can we help navigate this pressure to maintain some degree of profitability? Boy, it would be great to maintain the same level of profitability that you're used to. Some practices are struggling to maintain any profitability. We think that procurement as a business process is a high impact solution for the times that we are facing in 2020. So let's explore what that means and why we have that perspective. There's really 4 ways I'd like to explore today that procurement can add value to your bottom line. And those are cost reduction, cost avoidance, managerial or financial oversight, and team efficiencies, getting the most from your team. And we'll go into each of these in more detail, and we'll follow up with these 4 in terms of the financial numbers, so you can begin to digest what that might mean to your own practice. This is a great time to sort of put that entrepreneurial hat on. We always like to talk with our clients about this entrepreneurial mindset. You are a business owner when you're looking at procurement. It's more of a business function, more business focused. So we want to frame the rest of the presentation with that in mind. And we want to make sure that when you are considering this part of your business, we want to make sure that procurement sort of earns its spot in your mind share. Of all the things that you have, HR and many others outside of the clinical realm, we want to make sure that procurement is one of those areas that's top of mind, particularly in this profitability concern era that we're in now. So perhaps it'd be helpful for those of you maybe that are new to this term of procurement. Let's just describe this in a little bit more detail. We like to think of procurement as an end-to-end process to securing the goods and services that you need to run your practice. So the 5 steps that we've outlined in this particular diagram kind of encompass the method perspective on what those actions are, what those activities are. First, you have a sense of managing inventory, and by inventory I mean what's inside your 4 walls of one location or multiple locations, if you're a DSO, in fact. Number 2 would be sourcing the goods and services. Who are you going to buy those goods and services from? Some of you have longtime trusted partners. Others of you are exploring new sources of supply. That sourcing process has some discipline to it that we would like to advocate for at Method, and our clients are learning new techniques about what that really means. We want you to be armed with knowledge so that you can really leverage your buying power when you are selecting a supplier. And once you've selected a supplier, the sourcing process also includes managing that supplier. So staying with them as a partner to make sure that you are getting the maximum value for those expenditures from your partner. They really are a partner in your success. Number 3, request, approve, and order. This gets to the managerial oversight. There is a process, there should be a process before orders are placed. So this includes oversight and approval before that order goes out the door. We don't want to be asking questions, uncomfortable questions, after an order is already committed to and products arrive that maybe you as the practice owner, if you're a dentist or office manager or whoever the responsible party is, didn't approve. We don't want to have those kinds of questions. So we do it up front is the best practice there. So items arrive, we physically receive them. We need to inspect them for condition, expiration dates, accuracy, and then we need to put them away. Once they are put away, then we can proceed to that settlement and payment process. By settlement, we mean taking that invoice, reviewing it against what has been received, reviewing it against what your order conditions were, particularly the pricing that you were promised. And if those things all line up, then we can proceed to the payment. So 5 steps to kind of frame the end-to-end perspective on this procurement process. It obviously entails a lot more than just buying or ordering. Okay, so I'd like to give you next an example of cost reductions applied to dental supplies. Now, when we talk about procurement at Method, we really want to help our clients navigate not just dental supplies, because there are a lot of things that you buy, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. There's a lot of things that keep your lights on, including the utility bills that actually keep the lights on, right? So, but one area that we're all kind of hyper-focused on in dental is our supplies. So we did a little bit of study from our client data last fall, and these are some very common materials you can see in all sorts of categories, from anesthetics to PPE, infection control, etc. And this particular scenario also considers how many units that you might buy a year of that particular product. Okay? What we were able to do with the data in our platform is we were able to look at the high to low pricing spread. So in other words, ranking all the suppliers that we know carry that first item, Flexitime, ranking them from high to low, the current price that they offer. That was a 38% pricing spread from low offerer to high offerer. Okay? Now, you probably are not, if you have any luck at all, you're probably not always buying from the high supplier. You're probably not always buying from the low price supplier, right? It's a very dynamic situation. But even if you were at the median, if you were at the midpoint of the market price range on the products that you buy every day, what if we could move that needle down closer to the lower end of that pricing range? What would those savings be if we multiplied that by unit out on the volume that you use? So that's an 18% price spread is what we found. And that can really yield some significant cost reductions for most practices. And to expand on that further, the annual savings can be as high as $19,000 per year on $1 million production office. We have seen this number go higher with some of our clients. That's a 28% savings rate if you are moving from that high end to the low end. Now, this is just looking at a small percentage of supplies that you order. We want to move our clients somewhere in this high point to midpoint or midpoint to low point, depending on how aggressive we take our clients down this path. But you can see close to $10,000 is a typical figure that we are seeing when these procurement practices are applied properly. So hopefully that's gotten your attention a little bit. You may have all experienced some anecdotal evidence in your own buying experiences about the pricing that your suppliers were extending to you, and maybe the pricing, if you've ever asked for a price match with another supplier, or you've asked for bids for multiple suppliers, just like your eyes sometimes are opened wide to same products and the price spread that's involved, it can be some significant figures. Okay, so when we talk about cost reduction, simply we're trying to maximize your buying power, and we're trying to buy the same items for less. So we're taking off of the table, maybe buying different items necessarily, but we're trying to buy the items that we need to deliver a certain clinical result for using the most effective value-adding processes that we can. So what are some of those things? Well, first and foremost, we advocate for competitive bidding, periodically checking the market for the products that you buy to make sure that you are aware of and are able to receive favorable pricing. Now, sometimes that means establishing multiple supplier relationships, particularly when you have a high uncertainty environment on many products. PPE, I'm looking at you, PPE. Having already established accounts with additional suppliers who can provide you with an option is a key strategy that we always advocate for. But the flip side of that is you don't want to have too many suppliers that you're working with and to create kind of a chaotic environment where suppliers are not incented to come to the table with their best service for you. So this is really where we get to having the tough conversations. We advocate for a partnering approach with key suppliers. What that means sometimes is you have to have those tough conversations. Right now, it's all about making sure that that supplier understands your needs, ensuring that you have continuity of supply so you can keep your doors open, ensuring that they are extending to you any hardship programs or better competitive pricing that they may have to offer. Maybe it's been a while since they've looked at the pricing program that you're on. This is a great time to have that conversation. Maybe it's been a while since you've looked at your payment terms with a supplier. And this may be a good time to have a discussion about extending those payment terms, maybe from 30 days to 60 days, particularly if your patient and insurance payment terms have been extended. It might be a good time to talk about extending that with your partner suppliers as well. Once you have some contracts and some favorable pricing in place, you want to make sure that everyone on your team is using those contracts. Now, this may seem simple, but those of you that are part of a DSO, those of you that have multiple locations, those of you that have employee rotation, are all of your employees aware of those competitive pricing programs and those preferred contracts so that you're maximizing every dollar that goes out the door? Another way to increase your buying power, particularly if you are not in a multi-location environment, is give a hard look to the group purchasing organizations that are out there. The goal of those organizations is to leverage buying power of their membership. In many cases, that can have a great impact with not a lot of effort on your part to take advantage. We always advocate as well for high volatility items. Prices that are moving up and down rapidly, is you want to allocate some time to monitor that because there are gaps in the market. There are suppliers that are finding themselves squeezed on supplies, and they are ramping up their pricing a lot faster than other suppliers. So keeping an eye on that market range for those high volatility items is worth some time. Okay. And lastly, just to mention that, and I know I said buy the same products, but in many cases the same function might be available with either a different product, a different manufacturer, a different brand. Maybe it's time to take a look at moving more aggressively toward private label products. Maybe it's time to become further aware and talking to your account manager at your supplier about lower cost alternatives in certain areas of your clinical procedures. Okay. Sometimes it is worth looking at different units, right? Maybe there's a more economical bulk package available, and maybe it's time to consider that. So take a look at, are you getting the best value that you can to deliver that function? All right, let's move now to cost avoidance. So what is it? It's simply eliminating costs that do not add value. And this can be sometimes an easy task. This can be sometimes a little trickier. The things that go into cost avoidance, we like to talk about, number one, reducing waste. So are you monitoring expiration dates? Are you buying the right quantities so that you're not having to discard unused products after they expire, or just to use your space more efficiently? A lot of this comes back to this concept of inventory management. So for us, it's pretty simple. We coach our clients that it's really about tracking what you have. It's keeping a physically separate and secure location for these items. For example, one of our clients recently was very concerned about their implant inventory. Just the value of that implant inventory alone was well into the 5 figures. They wanted to begin not only tracking that implant inventory, but physically securing it, so that there's a limited number of people have access to it. It's all a great idea. You want to make sure that your team's responsibilities are crystal clear. Who is responsible for counting inventory? Who has access to the inventory? You want to make sure that there are some clear roles there. Okay, and you want to make sure that you are performing periodic processes. What does that mean? Taking the time to count, taking the time to refresh or rotate your old inventory to the front to make sure that it gets used before those expiration dates, making sure that your shelves don't contain any surprise items. How many times do products get stacked up in the heat of the moment? You're busy, and maybe you lose track of a couple of cases that you could put to use. Make sure that those periodic processes get done. Planning ahead, reducing surprises, reducing the impact of added shipping fees, expediting fees, overnight charges, air freight. All those things can be a drag on your practice. So if you're able to plan ahead better through better processes, we can avoid that whole category of cost. Reducing the product variations. The fewer products that you carry means your attention can be focused on those items. You can get better pricing typically on those items. But the question can be asked, do we really need every single size of gloves or mouth trays, for example? What's the historic use been? We also like to talk about a formulary. A formulary is a list of preferred products from either key manufacturers that you have financial arrangements with, discount programs with, or just items of clinical significance. If you can enforce that formulary and get your suppliers help to do that, that can avoid buying inappropriate products or unnecessary products as well. And then lastly, we always want to advocate, particularly in 2020, that you have a quality review process. As you're evaluating new products, don't be afraid to ask for samples, small test runs. Obviously, evaluate suppliers. If you are going to partner with a new supplier, make sure that you're looking at things such as authorized distributor channels with the manufacturers whose products that you trust. You want to be able to trust those products, trust the distribution channel of those products. And there's been some really entertaining articles I've read about people meeting in parking lots to make PPE purchases under the cover of darkness, like there's some illegal substances or something. You put your supply chain at risk when you extend it to partners that you don't know. So have a vetting process. Make sure that those suppliers are ones that you can trust your lifeblood to. All right, let's talk a little bit about management oversight, financial oversight. What can you do as a practice owner or office manager to create and enforce controls across this process, this end-to-end process? So some of the things that we've built into our software platform, but really could be done without a software platform. We think these things make a big difference. One is having a pre-purchase approval process. So instead of asking the uncomfortable questions after items arrive, purchases, particularly larger purchases, can be reviewed before they are committed to. Now, some suppliers, I know Darby Dental has this, I know other suppliers have this, they have an approval process inside their web ordering tool. If you're not sure if your supplier offers that, call your account manager and see if that can be set up. But it's an important part, we believe, of making sure the right expenditures are known by those in a managerial position. And tightly interwound with that is a budgetary review process. So in my opinion, it's not just enough to look at those purchases and say, yeah, it looks about right, let's move ahead. You really want to have a supplies budget, that you set and that you enforce. That every purchase against that is reviewed, so you know near the end of the month, particularly when those funds might be lower, you know what you're up against, and you have some upper limit to placing the orders. On to payables. Typically, an office will have an invoice review process. What we often don't find is that invoice review process is detailed enough. And by detailed, we mean checking the pricing that you were promised, so holding the supplier accountable from order to the invoice. Do those prices match that you expect? One study of invoices revealed about an average 4% exception rate, where the invoices were about 4% higher than the orders. So if you're budgeting and you think an order is going to be $1,000 and it comes in at $1,040 every time, that kind of money adds up. So you want to make sure that you're holding your supplier accountable by performing that review process in a detailed way. And you're also checking the received quantities against the invoiced quantities. So you're not just checking pricing, you're checking the received quantities against what's on that invoice, and that we call a three-way match process. It's not just a sign off an eyeball and then pay it. We also advocate for tracking your free or promotional goods. A lot of promises made, of course, during the purchase process or the pre-sale process. You want to make sure that you get those items if that's part of your buying decision. Tracking returns, tracking credits that are due to you. Having a way to do that. This is something we built into our tool to an extent. We have more plans around that. But it could be done with a simple spreadsheet or a file folder where those things are tracked and then cleared out periodically. Just having a disciplined receiving process, I think, is a key part of managerial oversight. So who is reviewing, who is opening the box, who is authorized to take those items out, check them over, and put them away. It shouldn't be just anyone in your office. It should be a defined role. And it should be something that they perform regularly so they get used to the products, they get used to that process, and teach your new employees this process as well. If that's going to be their role, that should be part of their training and onboarding. And then periodically, we always advocate for spending a few times a year looking at your trends, looking at your spend data, looking at the market pricing for some of those key items. Are you finding that percentage of your production is stagnant? Is it going up? Is it going down? And you want to look at that periodically and then go to a detailed level about some of the cost drivers, why that might be the case. So we believe that's all part of keeping a healthy managerial oversight on this important process. All right, so let's talk now a little bit about the labor side of things. How do we make your team more efficient when you're running this process? How can we reduce the effort? How can we leverage your employees' time and talent in other ways than sort of the mundane part of procurement? Well, if you're not taking advantage of online ordering, there's a lot to be gained there, not just in terms of accuracy and convenience, but it also really helps in the record keeping because you're able to snapshot what the pricing was that supplier has promised, and you're able to compare that later. You're also able to get real-time insights on stock availability and other specification information that may help in your decision-making process. This interesting process in the dental world about having your account manager visit your office and reorder your inventory for you. There's very few upsides in that other than your own labor savings. We always advocate to be very cautious if that is a process that you follow. You want to make sure that the fox is not in the hen house, so to speak. You want to maintain controls on your inventory and have your staff doing that count and making those decisions. So create a published process. We hear this a lot in dental, but it's really important on the procurement process not to skip that process when you're creating your documented procedures. And then streamlining the reorder cycle so that it's done either with regularity. So every 2 weeks or every Friday, there's a count done of items that are critical, and those items are reordered. But making it as streamlined as possible down to the individual tool that you use to record that and the people that are doing that action. Okay. And then lastly, I want to mention that suppliers are really a source of information and innovation. And I'm not just talking about having new things to sell you. Have a conversation with your supplier about ways that you can drive more value from the relationship. So maybe a different ordering pattern. We have seen people that order in such small quantities. They're ordering several times a week. Maybe by adjusting some of that and having a minimum order of $300 or $400 every time you order, something like that allows a supplier to get some efficiencies internally in serving your account. Have a conversation with your supplier about their thoughts on that, and you might be very surprised about some of the things that they're hearing from their other customers that they can pass along to you. We're all in this together. Method believes deeply in the dental community. We're trying our best to share some of these practices with all of you, and your suppliers are partners in that as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about calculating your own opportunities. Many of us have some numbers that we've been thrown from benchmarking and from other studies. Maybe your practice financial advisor has given you some benchmarks as well. I'd like to be able to go a little bit deeper than what you typically would hear from those advisors in terms of running the numbers on procurement. So from the top of the mountain, if we look at a typical $1 million production dental office, we have a breakdown in the destination, I guess, of that production dollar. Okay, so you can see a lot is allocated to staff, but we have a lot of different facilities and supplies fees as well. And then that leaves us with some income. And for this purpose, we're going to use the commonly quoted profit margin here in the next few slides of about 1/3. So about 33 to 35% profit margin is what drives to your owner as income. Okay. So of this, what can we impact? Of this spend that's going out the door, what can we impact? And it actually amounts to a pretty big number. 22.5% of revenue goes out the door on these types of things. So we have facilities that includes your rent, but it also includes your maintenance and your janitorial, the supplies themselves, the services that go with your practice's day-to-day operations, such as lab fees, maintenance and service on equipment that you have in the office. You have other business costs such as software, marketing, advertising. All the things that you cope with really add up to a big number. So we call this addressable spend in the procurement world. So 22.5% addressable spend might break down like this. Okay, but not all of those dollars are addressable through different procurement techniques. In other words, we can't move the needle on some of those things. For example, you can't effectively negotiate your electric rate with the utility company, right? You probably have rent locked in for a long term on your facility as well. So we're not going to include 100% of every dollar for some of these categories. Maybe 30% of your facilities would be addressable. We think that all of your lab supply fee or your dental supplies fees, all of your lab fees, all of your office supplies, those are prime candidates for procurement optimization. Maybe about 50% of other business costs, and you can see where that what that totals up to, that 225,000 of addressable spend. So how do we then attack some of these individual line items? We talked about procurement transformation, using the word transformation earlier today. When you look at across all types of products and services, we can save between 6 and 12% using procurement best practices on those items. Okay? Some items are going to be higher. For example, marketing services, advertising services usually carry a pretty high margin, and I've heard figures of 30 to 40% savings on those types of expenditures. Other times, there are commodity items that are extremely competitive that you're not going to be able to move the needle quite as much. Okay, so let's take office supplies. You may not have a nice juicy margin to go after in terms of supplier competition with office supplies. Okay, so and it's also dependent on how aggressively you want to approach that transformation. But if we were at the 6% level, or if we were able to achieve a 6% savings on that $225,000 of addressable spend, that would be 1.35% of your revenue, or $13,500 of hard cost. That's cost reduction that you could achieve. And then it scales from there. A much more comprehensive strategy could be 12% or even higher. We're trying to be conservative on these numbers for what the industry best practices really can be. So up to now, we've talked about sort of the cost reduction, cost avoidance side of things. Let's now talk a little bit more in terms of the dollars and cents on your labor. And we've taken a very conservative approach to this. If your team spends an average of 2.9 hours on procurement related activities per week, we expand that to per hour. We look at a blended cost for each of your full-time equivalents. That could be $2,800 a year spent on that activity, and we could save about 30%. 30% minimum is what we see with lowering the cost of running your procurement process, thanks to a transformation, particularly using technology. Some offices can save a lot more, depending on where your starting point is. Okay, but we think, and usually when I show these numbers to people, they agree with me that these are conservative. When you look at your total staff expenditure for the year, you think about saving between $800 and $5,000 a year across that entire team by doing things better in procurement, making fewer mistakes, having fewer panic orders. All these things add up to those labor savings. Okay, so if we put these together, the hard dollar, cost avoidance, cost reduction, and then the labor savings, we get an estimate of between $14,000 and $32,000 per year. And what I love to point out about this is if you are operating in a multi-location environment, it's not just as simple as multiplying these figures by the number of locations that you have. We actually see that there's some efficiencies of scale, and this is why as an industry, I think that the DSOs are really very powerful, and many of the investors realize this as well. But you have greater buying power when you combine multiple office locations. So you're able to go to a supplier and say, I'm not just buying $60,000 of supplies a year, I'm buying $120,000 because I have 2 locations, right? So what's the best rate you can give me on $120,000 of spend? And so you get an acceleration effect as you're able to drive more locations through that total spend number. And in many cases, there's a labor efficiency as well. Doing the process setting a good process up for one office, those lessons learned can be applied to all offices. And if you take some of the automation tools that are out there, you can still let your individual offices buy without having to hire a procurement team to run it. So a lot of the technology now is so good that you used to have a purchasing department. If you had any sort of size to, we really don't see that happening except at the very largest of DSOs these days. Okay, so here's this concept of production equivalency, and I love talking people through this slide because you can look at profit really 2 ways to drive profit to your bottom line. You can either save and reduce costs from your existing situation, or you can increase that top line number. You can increase the revenue, increase your production, and that will trickle down to a certain amount of profit at the end, that bottom line. But if we look at these together, it's very interesting, because what it allows you to do is say, okay, if I want to have $14,000 more, remember that's the low end of our savings range, 14 to 32,000. If I can save that, that's profit. That's direct profit. If I save $14,000, that comes right to my bottom line as 14,000 additional in profit. Okay. The other way I can get 14,000 of additional profit is I can produce $42,000 more in the chair. And of course, your whole team's involved with that. Not only do you have to get the patients in the door, you have to get them to agree to the procedures. You have to perform those operatory procedures to get that revenue. Savings from procurement is very different, but they yield the same result: $14,000 to your bottom line. Now, as profit margins get squeezed, and we began the session this morning about that. We want to emphasize this point. The smaller your profit margin becomes, the more production that you have to generate to get that same level of profit to your bottom line, right? This is where procurement is no longer a process that really can be ignored. You can't let procurement run on auto drive any longer, or autopilot. You want to make sure that you're optimizing your procurement just as much or as more as you optimize your production, because as your profit margins go down, that equivalency equation drives up the amount of production that you have to yield. With throughput being an issue right now, production is an issue right now. So we want to turn our attention to the other side of the equation, the cost side of the equation, to get the equivalent profit. All right, so hopefully that all made sense and resonated with your own experiences. We have put together a tool. We'll share a link in a little bit. We've put together a tool to help people estimate their own return on investment of making a procurement transformation, as well as the production equivalency that we just talked about. So we'll share that link in a little bit. All right, so how can you take action? I've probably scared some of you with all the things that you could do. I apologize, that was not my intention. We want to give you some options. Not every practice is the same. Some of you have already started those important steps down that road. Others might be pondering how to begin. Here's what we would suggest. Look at your processes in the context of what we've talked about today. Identify a handful. They should fit on one hand, 2 or 3, 4 key areas for improvement and prioritization. Sit down with your staff at your next meeting and talk about how those improvements might be implemented. Okay. I would strongly suggest that you look at competitive pricing as a priority, and partnering with your key supplier in that. That's oftentimes what we're seeing is a lot of the low-hanging fruit, holding the suppliers accountable to a better savings program. Asking about those savings programs is part of that. Okay. Understand your practice's return on investment potential. Here's the link to the tool, as I promised, methodusa.com/ROI. I think once you see your own figures in that light, in that context, hopefully the urgency will be there, so that you can not only have the urgency personally, but you can spread that urgency to the team, and everyone can get engaged and energized around driving those types of results for your practice as a whole. And then I would also, this is a bit of a nudge in the direction of what Method does, but there is technology that can guide and automate these practices. It doesn't have to be legal pads and spreadsheets, but some of the techniques certainly can be done with very basic tools. What we find is that to fully embrace the potential of a procurement transformation, you need to have some technology that supports it. And so we would urge that it doesn't have to be Method, but we would urge that you take a look at those types of tools as you consider your next steps forward. So since many of you might be curious, I'll just give you a few points about how we approach this for our clients as a technology solution. We have a technology tool that supports that end-to-end transformation. It's very easy to use for your staff to adopt, and it's built for dental from the ground up. So we've engineered it for your workflows, for your products, to work with the suppliers that we see every day in this industry, and it gives you flexibility to implement what you want to implement on the schedule that you choose. So some of our clients are embracing barcode scanning, for example. That's one of our features, and others are not. They're not quite ready for that. But I want to give you a few screenshots to ponder. Two key areas that we deliver. One is on the sourcing side. So we have a dental industry catalog of over 400,000 items. These are items that you know and trust from the major manufacturers. And we also have a database of the authorized distributors who carry those. And that provides you the ability to get the latest pricing and availability for many suppliers on what the supply situation is, so that you can compare. And we have an open supplier approach. So we are not a supplier. We will activate or enable your suppliers as a client of Method. And that differentiates us from other solutions that are out there. Visually, what does this look like? Well, hopefully you're all used to ordering online these days. You're used to a shopping cart. You're used to being able to search. You're used to being able to add those products into a shopping cart. You're used to being able to see information about the products that you want to order, images, manufacturer information. If I click on any of the supplier names to the right here on this particular screen, it takes me to the site at Benco or at Shine or Safco, and you can read even more about those products. And then we provide a pricing survey of the market, so you can see low to high, and you can see where your preferred or key supplier falls in that range, and then place your orders accordingly. As part of that, we offer a cost analysis grid where you can look at the columns. You can see there are the major suppliers that you might have pricing with, or just public-facing pricing, and then the lowest price is highlighted for you to do that comparison. Now, you may not use this feature in your particular practice because you already have a partner that you trust with good solid pricing program for you, but some of you on this call may not have that yet, so you could take advantage of the Method option here. Okay. The next snapshot I just want to leave you with is the business process of requesting products, checking the budget, checking for approval prior to purchase, as we talked about, that being a best practice, and then placing the orders with suppliers. One of the nice things about our platform is that it's a consistent process, no matter which supplier, no matter what you're buying. So it's more of your process that we're enabling, not the supplier. If you use a supplier's website, you are at their whim. In that supplier's website, is designed to support their business process of selling to you. Ours is a buy-side tool, so it's supporting your internal processes of review and approval. So as we want to keep our team on the same page, any requests for the pre-approval purchase, pre-purchase approval rather, your entire team can see where those are as they proceed through a workflow. As they are in that workflow, our system will highlight if the remaining budget is safe to proceed. Here you can see it's highlighted in red. The budget is exceeded. It will show you by how much. You can still proceed if you wish, but this will be information that's really helpful to you as a practice owner or office manager before those purchases are committed. And keeping everyone on that same page is really essential. You don't want your ordering activity, your procurement activity locked away in in someone's email box. We even support declining and an audit trail on who approved or who declined and the reason for that decline if it was a decline. And then lastly, we track the status of the order with the supplier. When they accept the order, all that can be consolidated as well. And we're working on some great technology to provide deeper insights even to the shipping process and the tracking of the parcels as they leave the warehouse and make their way to you. All right, so just a little bit of a snapshot there on what Method does in more detail. So now I'd like to turn it back to Stephanie, and we'll see if we have any discussion or questions.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, we do have some. So the first question that came up is, will we send a recording of the session? And yes, we will. So after the session, you'll get a recorded email and you'll see the whole session with Dan and I and the whole team. Another thing that came up is about the private labels. Does our catalog, Dan, you can go further in this, have private label items in there for them to choose within the list?
Yeah, so part of our catalog of the 400,000 dental products does include the private label products, and we've built a cross-reference so that you can compare the, one distributor to another on their private labels. So you could look at a Benko to a Shine to a Darby, et cetera, for the same type of ear loop mask, level 1 mask, or a bonding agent, et cetera. And we believe this is the first cross-reference to be built in the industry to allow you to do that. And we don't have coverage for every product, but for about 40,000 products, we do have that coverage for.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. So we are rounding the 3 minutes until 1 o'clock. It shows that we've answered some of those questions. So I just wanted to go ahead and respect everyone's time. So if we can go ahead and do the wrap up for today, Dan, I appreciate it so much. Obviously, if there's more questions, please send those in and we will answer them and we'll email back to you guys for those answers. All right. Well, first off, I want to thank you and for everybody to attend today. We appreciate your time and attention. We know as everything is going on, it's super crazy and busy. So if you guys are interested, we do encourage you, what Dan was talking about, is get your free personalized ROI at the link right there. If you guys are interested in there, you'll see the chats will be coming up with those links for you to do a request for demo. And also, if you need more information, you guys will be able to see our video at those links in the chat right now. We do want to mention also that if you do request a demo and you like what you see with Method, if you signed up by August 31st, we'll give you guys a 20% discount. Just don't forget to mention that you saw us at Method webinar. And lastly, I want to thank you so much for the sponsors, Darby and CareStack. Thank you so much, Allison and Jim. We appreciate your time. And Dan, thank you so much for doing this speech today. I'm glad that we all got together and we were able to do this. Well, everyone have a good day and you'll hear from us later on. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.